What's up, everybody? How's it going? Back at it, Guard. Here again, Guard. Actually, with a pretty decent clip from TYT, Guard. So super excited to bust that out. Gavin, how you doing? Coming at you live, not from the studio, but from sunny New Orleans. Fuck you. It's cold as hell in Kansas City. How's it going, dude?
Going great, going great. Super excited to be back on the podcast. Took a couple days off, but yeah, we thought this story required our attention, so we decided to hop on here. In fact, I am in New Orleans, which is so beautiful this time of year. Great to get a bit of a reprieve from the cold of Kansas City. So yeah, super excited to be back and break down this pretty infuriating story. And as you mentioned, Zach, actually a surprisingly decent take from the Young Turks.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gavin's charitably performed much better than I would under the circumstances. If I was coming at you live from New Orleans, I would have been about 9 Sazeracs deep right now. So appreciate the burst of sobriety from Gavin. No, but yeah, I guess we can without further ado get right into it after we shout out our patrons like we do. Shout out to the Vanguard Patreon community. I don't know if we have the graphic prepped. If not, that's okay. You guys know we love you. We do. Gavin hitting it on all fronts, even from out of town. Let's go. But yeah, shout out to all of you lovely people that keep the wheels on our van going round and round, the lights on in our studio. And yeah, super excited to break this one down for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge shout out to the patron community. Thank you guys so much for the support. As you know, we do like to start and end all of our live shows with a big shout out to the patrons for making the show possible. We wouldn't be able to do it without you guys. So thank you so much. And as always, the link's going to be found in the description. That's patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. And it's always going to be found in the description of all of our content. So please do consider hitting up that link, supporting the show if you enjoy our work. As I said, we wouldn't be able to do the show without the support of our patrons. So thank you so much. And thanks everyone so far that's tuned in to today's stream, seeing some familiar faces in chat. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Make sure to hit that like button if you're just now tuning in. That's another great way to support the show. 100% for free. So please hit that like button. We'd really appreciate that before we get started. And also a huge shout out to you, Dan Campbell. Thank you so much for the $20, the first super chat of the live stream. Really appreciate that, Dan. All bull. It's like Howard Stern, who used to rag on celebrities when they refused to do interviews. Anna is just pissed that AOC doesn't return her phone calls anymore. That's pretty funny. It is true that AOC has entirely abandoned all of the progressive outlets, including the Young Turks, that got her elected in the first place. I don't think she's been on TYT for over 2 years now. So yeah, I once said that TYT did access journalism without the access, but now maybe that's even drying up.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I do think that Anna makes a good point here in this clip that we're going to react to. However, it's clear that if they were getting repeat access to faces like AOC, like the rest of the squad, then we probably would have heard more of kid gloves on than we potentially do in this video. But shout out to you, Dan. Really appreciate that generous donation.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dan. We really appreciate that. Always enjoy your comments and really appreciate the contribution. Thank you as well, Alex. Really appreciate the $9.99, Alex. As always, really appreciate your generosity. Wanted to use my super chat for promotional reasons. Interview with you guys, Vanguard, up on my channel on Wednesday or Thursday. Yeah, everyone stay tuned for that. We might plug it on the show, but we're going to be hopping on Alex's show, which he's just now starting out, I believe. To do a little conversation. So that should be a lot of fun. Everyone stay tuned for that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing I like more than talking about myself and Gavin. So I'm really looking forward to this, Alex.
Yeah, really looking forward to it, Alex. Always appreciate the super chats and the commentary from you. And yeah, really looking forward to chatting. So thank you so much for the $9.99. Really appreciate that, guys. And also, not a new set. The set is the same, just out of town right now in New Orleans. Be back to Kansas City on Monday, I believe. So,
since Gavin wasn't here, I just decided to broadcast from my bedroom, which is why it's a little less glorious than normal.
Also, I just remember that we don't have to mute ourselves when the other person is talking.
I know, except I've been doing it this entire time. I have it anyway. Yeah.
Me too.
Oh well.
We can just talk over each other and fucking interrupt
Yeah,
each other.
interrupt each other with a reckless abandon.
Yeah.
Honestly, the mute thing was so good for our show in the first year. Gavin and I had, because we don't know anything about audio. Whenever the other person is talking, we hit the mute button. And at first, I used to be so bad. It was like I had we fucking were jumping each other's throat to get out there. But if you muted, you're like, okay, fucking grip the seat and then try really hard to remember what you were gonna say. But you get better at it over time. But anyway, shout out to you, Rebel K. And without further ado, I think we can go ahead and get into the weeds. Did you have want to intro the story, Gav?
Yeah, just as Rebel K said, make sure to smash that like button. And yeah, this has just been so frustrating to watch the way the Biden administration has responded to these striking or potentially striking rail workers. Did you want to go into some details, Zach, about what's gone down before we dive into this Young Turks clip?
Yeah, absolutely. So this has been one of those maddening things that I've been keeping an eye on for the past couple of weeks. And if you really, guys, if you want to get into the sourcing, I really do recommend what's it, the Early Bird newsletter from Jonah Furman. I get those guys sent to me all the time. And also he's a great follow on Twitter if you're looking for somebody to break down what's happening. Also Max Alvarez from the Real News Network covers this shit like crazy. And I know that there's been a lot of frustration from those guys that the New York Times just basically, and when I say the New York Times, I mean all broader legacy media just kind of ignored all of the deep on the ground reporting that they were doing in the build up to this to be like, nobody understands why this is happening. So go back to those original guys. They've been reporting on this for a while, but essentially the Reader's Digest version is the railroad workers in this country are getting the absolute fucking shit end of the stick right now. They've been getting fucked for a long time. I was actually just having a conversation with our good buddy Tim at the coffee shop explaining what was going down with the union rail card workers. And it's basically what I said was, imagine these fat, worthless fuckers that are the bosses of the railroad industry, and they're making money hand over fist, hundreds of millions of dollars off of the exploitation of these essential railroad workers. These guys, you can't. The reason why the government is stepping in right now is because our country will fall the fuck apart without the train systems. Gavin and I are acutely aware of this. We live in a big railroad hub in Kansas City, one of the last in a major metropolitan area that's not human transit at all. It is 100% cargo. It is how you ship shit across this country, and you will realize how much of our fucking country is moved by freight trains. Okay, so that's a big deal. So 60,000 union workers band together because they're not allowed to take fucking sick days. And I'm going to say that one more time because it's that hard to believe. They're not allowed to take sick days. Taking a sick day is the same as just calling in, fuck all, I'm going to a Chiefs game, I'm going to whatever, I'm not coming into work. That's the same thing. That is criminal. That is fucking criminal, especially in the midst of a pandemic. Do you know how many different illnesses are going around right now? It is a crime to force somebody to come to work to get their paycheck and infect somebody else. Do you remember all these grandiose fucking proclamations that came from the liberal class during the pandemic, many of which I was sympathetic to because I also believe it is a crime to be forced to go somewhere and infect somebody else with an illness that could, potentially have long-term damage to them. Okay. So what did they come? Did they come asking for $1 million in a unicorn? No, they didn't. They came with some very reasonable fucking demands. They said, we want 7 paid days of sick days, or however many, 2 weeks paid a sick day, whatever, something super reasonable. I don't have the numbers in front of me off my head. I know the Senate was going to pass 7 days, but I'm not entirely sure what the initial union ask was. And then a pay raise. Okay. These are the two things that they were fighting for. Not that hard. This is a very profitable industry. I know a lot of people think railroads are thinking, oh, they have to make cutbacks. No, they do not. They're making a fuck ton of money. They are understaffing. They are working these people to death with no benefits. And what did they do? 60,000 of these motherfuckers band together in solidarity and say, we're going to strike and we're going to do it when you guys need us, which is right at the holiday time when it's busy as fuck for these transit people. And Joe Biden and all the fucking Democrats, they all get together and they say, you know what? That's going to look really bad for us if the economy is in the shitter and the entire infrastructure falls apart because these essential train workers decide to strike. So instead of forcing the robber barons and these fat fucks at the top to give these people what they actually deserve, they decide to go in there and union bust. And strike bust rather, excuse me. But they go in there and bust the strike. They say it's going to be fucking illegal for you to strike right now. You will be fired legally if you go on strike now. Now, obviously, these people can collectively decide to do a wildcat strike, but if you're jeopardizing your job and the government's not going to give you any labor protections at all, and they're saying you can't get your sick days, and they're saying you can't get your fucking raise, and you have to work anyway, what the fuck kind of madness is this? So that's the Reader's Digest. That's my loose interpretation of what's gone down.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, Biden has sold himself as a labor friendly president, a pro labor president. That was one of the big issues he campaigned on. He's really kind of pretended to lean into those issues. However, the actual workers that are being affected by this clearly do not feel that way. There's been a couple clips and interview quotes posted to that effect. Here's a great interview with a guy named Reese Murtagh. He's a rank and file worker who is now running against incumbent leadership for the presidency of his union. And I think this kind of sums up the way that a lot of the actual labor and specifically the rail workers are feeling about the way Joe Biden has handled this. So I wanted to take a quick listen here before we get into the TYT coverage.
You voted for President Biden, but now you say you feel like he's turned his back on you. Why?
Well, what we've seen with this great rail strike of 22 that has ended very undramatically is we've seen unionized workers' right to bargain collectively get trampled on. Their voice has not been heard. They voted against a contract. We have a pro-labor president who loves to, pat himself on the back for that. And when the going got tough, he turned his back on the people he's supposed to be looking out for.
And when this bill that is now going to go to President Biden pass the House, it had a separate measure that actually had 7 sick days for you and your colleagues. That did not make it through the Senate. They voted against it. Are you asking President Biden not to sign this bill?
It's a good question. You don't go against what your members vote for. So shout out to Jamal Brown for getting that bill going and looking out for us. But the sick days was more of a distraction. The main attraction here is Joe Biden forced a contract on our unionized workers who voted against it. And listen, we don't want to strike, but the only way we can get a fair contract is to strike. That's our only leverage. The rail carriers do not negotiate in good faith. The Railway Labor Act does not have time limits on these contracts we negotiate. So that can mean we can be negotiating a contract for 5 years. And we have no power to get a good contract. Our only leverage is to strike. And I feel like this whole process, the workers have kind of been demonized where it's like, y'all are trying to shut the economy down. We're not. We're out here working 14 hours a day in all weather conditions. Most of us work outside. We need some sick days. Why aren't you guys talking to the rail carriers? We're out here every day working, moving freight, making things happen. And when the leaders we vote in who are supposed to support us, turn their back on us, the system's broken.
Yeah, so I think that worker sums up pretty well the attitude towards Joe Biden and the fact that, again, he postures as a pro-labor president. He ran as a labor-friendly president and has now completely betrayed these workers, turned his back on labor when the going got tough, as that guy said. And here's another message from a railroad worker in Ohio that speaks to the same dissatisfaction. Let's put it this way. For 3 years, I flew a flag in front of my house that said impeach Trump. If Trump runs against Biden in 2024, I'll take some of my back pay and give it to Trump. I feel betrayed by Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think that's a fucking message that's going to be felt by a lot of people in this country. It's funny. I actually was at work last night, and I get a text from my dad, and my dad was pissed as hell about this. And I talk about my dad sometimes on this podcast because I think he's like a good litmus test for like a lifelong Republican that I think could be brought over. Like he fucking hates the police now, that kind of shit. And he was like, "What the fuck is going on? Like, how didn't Joe Biden run on being friendly to unions? Didn't he run on the fact that he was Scranton Joe? Didn't he run on the fact that he was going to stand with workers? How the fuck is this standing with workers, right? This is like the shittiest thing that anybody's done since Reagan, it feels like. You know what I mean? So I mean, I think that that's going to be felt across the board. And of course, somebody that voted for Joe Biden that actually believed what he said when he said, "Oh, I will be the most pro-union president of like my lifetime or anybody's lifetime or whatever the fuck they were trying to sell people on during the election cycle. That's just clearly not happened. In fact, he's been an anti-union president. Like the only good things that he's done has been the NLRB, and I'm getting tired of bringing that up as the only fucking good thing he did as president. And the other thing I wanted to shout out really quickly is I've seen a lot of people trying to make excuses for the way that the squad voted by saying like, oh, if you're criticizing the squad, then you're actually just criticizing what the union members wanted, right? Because the union leadership told them to do this. If you actually spent like fucking 45 seconds reading any of the numerous op-eds by any of the actual railroad fucking working class guys, they're going to talk about how throughout the history of unions, the unions leadership and the fucking government and the bosses have tried to fuck them a million times. What are you talking about? As if this is something new? No. The people here were really clear about what they wanted. They voted on it. They rejected the deal. They didn't fucking want the bill. I don't care how you spin it. You going out there and trying to say, hey, it's actually a good thing that the president is going to force you to take a deal that your union rejected. Get fucked, guys. I even saw Ben Burgess tweeting about this. He was like, I've been a socialist a long time. I can't ever remember when forcing people to take a shit deal that they didn't want. I'm, what's the word?
Paraphrasing.
But, I never remember when that was something that a socialist was going to do, was just tell these people, yeah, take the short end of the stick, the shit end of the stick. Like, for what reason? That was not what the working class voted on. So been pretty prickly about how that's been portrayed, as if that somehow means anything to me. Well, a couple of union leaders, like, they also wanted these guys to take the shaft. Like, fuck you. I don't care about that. I care about the 60,000 fucking workers that said no.
Absolutely. And as Jordan Cheriton posted here, on the first bill without paid sick leave for rail workers, every member of the squad except Rashida Tlaib voted yes, once again proving that Rashida Tlaib is the most base squad member. There was then a second bill in the House with 7 days of sick leave for rail workers. Every Democrat voted yes, including the squad. And of course, to the layman, to the average Joe who's not following this closely, they might look at that and say, oh, well, they're passing another bill to get these sick days. What's the issue here? Isn't that what people want? No. The fact that these two bills were separated in the first place is so that those sick days won't happen. And of course, the Senate then struck that down. It did not pass in the Senate. So yeah, the whole point of separating those bills, exactly like what we saw with the Build Back Better legislation and the bipartisan infrastructure bill, they separate them into two bills, one which has all the good stuff, one which has all the shitty stuff, and they pass the shitty one and act like it's a victory and say, oh, well, look at us, we did a good thing, and then let the bill with the actual populist policy in it die, in this case, that being the actual sick days, which these workers are striking for. They should have never decoupled it, as Tyler said. So, that's in case you haven't been paying attention, and it might sound like, oh, well, they did the right thing. They voted for the sick days. No, they didn't. That's not going to happen. So, that's another classic trick often pulled by Democrats in Congress.
Yeah, exactly what you said with the Build Back Better. As soon as you decoupled it, it's dead. That is their favorite fucking bait and switch, as they call it. So, yeah. Completely ridiculous. Did you want to go ahead and get into the Anna Kasparian clip, Gavin?
Absolutely. So, there's been a lot of frustration with the lack of resistance to this coming from progressives in Congress, not just because of the way they voted, but also just seemingly very little pushback or resistance to the betrayal of workers on behalf of the Joe Biden administration. A lot of people, even folks like Cenk and Anna over at the Young Turks, who are usually supporters of the squad, have kind of reached their boiling point when it comes to this issue, and just the lack of action, the cowardliness of Congress people like AOC, who posture as progressives, but when push comes to shove, they don't actually fight. They go along to get along, just like anybody else. So again, there's a lot of frustration with the squad members, with the Congressional Progressive Caucus, not just from guys like me and Zach, but again, from people like TYT. And there's a really interesting clip from the Young Turks the other day, which I think illustrates that quite well. Before we get into that, thank you so much, the Sinister Mister, for the $5. Really appreciate that donation. Having to strike for 6 time in a physical labor job is dystopian lunacy. 100%. It's madness that this is even up debate in the first place. How is it even legal to not give people sick days?
Yeah, absolutely. It's absurd, and it's also fucking hilarious. Not in any kind of, I mean, comedy sense, but just an absurd sense. That I mean, Joe Biden ran on, oh, every person that died for under COVID from Donald Trump, like were personally like fucking, killed by Trump, and nobody should be president if they're not going to take like, an illness seriously and all this kind of shit. And then immediately backpedals and changes his tune the second he's in office, and it becomes more politically salient for him to, force these people to just do whatever the fuck they're ownership class wants of them. He's treating them like peons, like fucking just desperate masses that powerless people. It's fucking it's I mean, in the richest country in the world, this is the kind of fight we're having. Absolutely absurd. The idea of Joe Biden being pro-labor is a joke. Yeah, absolutely. It's fucking marketing and nothing else. There's absolutely nothing in this man's career, again, outside of the narrow margin. And I will say this because then absolutely nobody can say we're not giving the full picture. The NLRB is mildly better than it would have been under Donald Trump. I think that is the literal only pro-labor thing you could say about Joe Biden, and fuck that shit.
Absolutely. So let's get into this TYT video. Thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate the super chat. Thank you also, Sinister Mister. Really genuinely appreciate you guys' comments. And also thank you, Hysteric Raider, for the $2. Biden is pro corporate bosses union. 100%. And that's the problem. A lot of the labor unions, which donate to Democrats, it's actually on the behalf of the corporate union bosses, not the rank and file membership. So just because the Democrats appear to have the support of unions traditionally, doesn't actually mean that they're accountable to the interests of the rank and file union member. It's one of the unfortunate things about a lot of unions in this country, and it's one of the reasons why a guy like Chris Smalls decided to start his own union with Amazon, the Amazon Labor Union, rather than join a pre-existing one. And speaking of Chris Smalls, he has suggested now that the railroad workers strike anyway, essentially advocating for a wildcat strike, which would technically be illegal, but is still probably the best chance the workers have at this point of getting what they want and making their demands clear.
Yeah, absolutely. And if Joe Biden did authorize the firing, if they did lay off all of those striking workers, good luck getting reelected. Good luck getting reelected. So yeah. Anyway.
Absolutely. So without further ado, let's get into our titular clip from the Young Turks. Again, I was definitely surprised by the frustration here. They do a pretty decent job breaking down this situation, and then midway into the video, they really start going off on the squad and AOC in particular for the fact that their rhetoric on unions is not matching up with the fighting spirit that is required in a moment like this. It's totally disgraceful. The lack of action, the lack of resistance and pushback to the Biden policy on this issue coming from the progressives in Congress. And again, it's not just people like Zach and I at this point that are come to terms with that and acknowledging it. It's even folks like Cenk and Ann. Of course, Cenk started the Justice Democrats. He was the co-founder of Justice Democrats, which helped elect AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ayanna Pressley, Cori Bush, etc. And now Cenk Uygur, in no uncertain terms, as well as his co-host Anna, is just seemingly at their wits' end, completely fed up with this bullshit.
Yeah, and if this is how Anna feels, imagine how an average worker feels. Somebody who actually voted for Joe Biden on a whim and a prayer because they were like desperate for some kind of help, and Joe Biden was promising to give it to them. He dangled it in front of them and then said, fuck you. Christian 999, shout out to you for the $2. Amtrak Joe screwed the workers. Bunch of BS. Yeah, fuck Amtrak Joe. Joe Biden, his entire campaign was the result of shady marketing, which is the entire shoddy marketing. I mean, that was done 24/7. And that is essentially the one thing that will always remind us that he was the VP of Obama, who was the champ when it came to marketing. I mean, that's what got Obama the White House, and that's what honestly got Joe Biden the White House. It was just a marketing campaign while he fucking hid in the basement, and they tried to portray him as like some sort of old school Union Joe. Clearly, we know that's not true. We always knew that wasn't true. We just didn't know quite the extent, though maybe we should have. But anyway, we can go ahead and play this after you respond, Gav.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christian 999. Really appreciate the $2. And absolutely. Also, speaking of Amtrak and the railways, it's about goddamn time we just nationalize the industry. Amtrak sucks. There's no reason our trains have to be this shitty. If they're going to, the whole argument for privatization is that, oh, well, if the government just does it, then the shit won't work as well. It won't be as nice. You know, the private corporations are going to do a better job catering to the customer. Well, have you ever ridden a goddamn Amtrak? You know, I like riding the trains, but it's disgraceful how archaic the Amtrak system is in this country. Compare it to anywhere in Europe or especially in Asia. It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing. Some real third world kind of shit. And given that we are the richest country in the world, it's far past time that this specific industry is nationalized. You know, I support nationalization of many industries, but the rails is such an obvious one. It's mind blowing that we outsource it to these private corporations, these monopolistic corporations, only for them to provide such shit returns and, you know, such a shit product.
100%. Shout out for a couple of these last super chats that have trickled in. Shout out to you, Hysteric Raider. Jank, be happy as a fellow union buster. Yeah, look, Jank has a very like self-interested view of politics, right? We've covered this a million times. I think that's the bedrock of his homelessness beef. I think that's why he hates. I mean, you can't be a leftist if you hate poor people. And every time I hear Jank open his mouth about the homeless, I'm like, you have absolutely no soul. You have no empathy for the fucking horrible situation that this person had to endure to end up here. So you're not an actual authentic leftist, which is why he was able to rationalize to himself that, like, you know, and I've had people try to be like, well, you know, this is what happened when Jank union busted. It was like, he thought it was an op from another fucking campaign. I'm like, yeah, he thought it was going to be a pain in his fucking ass, so he stopped supporting it real quick. That's how they get you. That's swamp monsterfication taking place. So yeah, Jen can just rationalize anything for his own benefit. Pretty soon it's going to be to his benefit to start portraying the squad like monsters for union busting, and he's going to go fucking do it. But at least he has Anna here to once again do the dirty work for him.
That's such a great point, Hysteric Raider. Thank you so much for the $2. And absolutely, you know, this clip we're about to watch, it's pretty good, all things considered. In a vacuum, pretty good commentary. But let's not forget the elephant in the fucking room, Mr. Pro Union, Jank Huger over here, a notable union buster himself. A notable union buster tried at all costs to bust the TYT union, which luckily succeeded despite him. They are unionized over at TYT now, thankfully, but only in spite of Jank Huger's efforts to prevent it. So thank you so much, Hysteric Raider. And again, despite the fact that Jank and Anna both, you know, come off pretty well in this clip and make good points and express a frustration that I think we all feel, let's not forget that glaring hypocrisy. So thank you so much for bringing that up and pointing that out, Hysteric Raider. It's definitely important to keep in mind. Thank you as well, Ramian. Really appreciate the $10. What do you think of Elon and Matt Taibbi's Twitter revelations last night or last PM? More on the way. I've been monitoring that peripherally. I am kind of on vacation, so I haven't been paying like super close attention. We felt like this was, you know, necessary to cover, but I haven't, you know, been paying super close attention to these Twitter revelations. I have heard about it, like I said, peripherally. Have you been paying any more attention to that, Zach?
About as much as you have. I imagine we will cover this, Ramiam, at least in passing, when Gavin gets back into town as more goes on. But I haven't been like, you know, scrupulously following it either. But I really appreciate it, and I'll make a note for myself, Ramiam, so we can shout you out when we have you know, a more rounded understanding of everything as well.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the $10, Ramian, and thanks for the reminder to check or look into that and report on it in the future. We'll definitely cover that. So thank you so much, Ramian. Really appreciate the $10 super chat. And also, once again, thank you so much, Hysteric Raider. I took the elephant comment on Jank as a fat joke. Yeah, he is also the elephant in the room, but that's pretty funny. Thank you so much, Hysteric Raider.
Wow, fat phobic Gavin over here. Jeez. Getting us canceled. No, I'm just kidding. Shout out to you, Hysteric Raider. That was funny. Victor Gitao, also very new to union discourse, but confused as to how far apart union leaders are from members because leadership agreed to the Biden deal. Yeah, there's a long history, a sordid history of union leadership being disconnected from its membership. And now, look, this isn't always the case. I don't want to give like a fucking one-sided view of unions, but in this instance, yeah, the union leadership said, okay, go ahead and eat this shit sandwich, after the people said, no, we don't want a shit sandwich. And then they were like, oh, come on, you don't want a shit sandwich. And that's basically what went down here from as far as I can tell. They went ahead and tried to side with the government, which has happened time and time again. Even in an article I was reading in The Guardian, this is what blew my mind by all these like so-called leftists. In a mainstream press, The Guardian, which is like I tell people all the time, my favorite place to get mainstream press, because a lot of the writers write with like weird British kind of like fucking anyway. And they're talking about how for fucking ever the union leadership has been fucking disconnected from the workers, which ultimately, as Gavin said earlier, it's led to lower fucking union rates in this country, because what, like, yeah, and you know, back in the day, there's all kinds of stuff that about corruption with the unions. I mean, that's like the one thing I took away from all fucking 800 hours of The Irishman. You know what I mean?
That movie was long as fuck. That's funny as fuck. Also, yes, as Rebel K says, hit that like button, guys. We're about to get into this video, but we'd really appreciate if all you guys hit that like button. That's a great way to help the show get some more comrades in the chat. So again, everyone hit that like button, and thank you so much, Victor. Really, really appreciate that. $4.99, 100% on point. So thank you so much. And without further ado, let's get right into this.
Officially voted on adopting a measure that forces a deal between the national freight railroad companies and their unions. There was a separate bill too, you know, the bill that would give the workers what they wanted. They don't want just measly 4 days of sick leave. But the legislation, the separate legislation, was a little more generous, 7 days of sick leave. One of them passed, one of them didn't. Can you guess which? Now, the proposal to give workers 7 days of sick leave failed. Wow, what a shocker, to pick up enough Republican support to overcome a 60-vote threshold set for adopting the measure, and fell 52 to 43. Now, my prediction yesterday in regard to people like Josh Hawley, a Republican, turned out to be wrong. But Josh Hawley very likely knew that this legislation wasn't going to pass. So let me give you the details. 6 Republicans voted for the sick leave measures. Senators Mike Braun, Ted Cruz, Lindsey Graham, Josh Hawley, John Kennedy, and Marco Rubio. Get a load of this, though. Senator Joe Manchin is the worst person in Congress. He's the only Democrat to vote against it.
So they always tell us, oh, but it's better that Manchin's a Democrat than a Republican.
Apparently not.
He's apparently more right-wing than the Republicans. So there you go. Congratulations, Democratic leadership, for keeping him in the fold. That worked out brilliantly.
Okay, so let's pause, because I want to discuss. I actually want to discuss the House first, because that's where I believe the problem began. And part of the problem, and what enrages me beyond words at this point, is that the Congressional Progressive Caucus went along with this maneuver when I also believe the corporate Democrats knew full well that the bill to give the workers the sick leave that they desperately need and want was going to fail in the Senate, okay? They could have voted on one piece of legislation, right? Think about that. One piece of legislation that both prevents the workers from striking, I guess, right? Because that's what the goal here is. They don't want the economy to shut down. They don't want to lose $2 billion a day as a result of a strike. But the bill should have included the sick leave. And so why did they separate it, Cenk? Why do you think it was separated into 2 separate pieces of legislation? Why do you think that happened?
Yeah, so here's why it happened. Theoretically, conservative Democrats put pressure on leadership, but that's nonsense. They don't have to put pressure on leadership because Democratic leadership is already very, very conservative on economic issues. So Hakeem Jeffries didn't need any convincing. The number 1 priority is make sure there's no strike and that the workers know their goddamn role. Number 2 priority is set up a fake vote where we know we're gonna lose, but we get to do marketing saying, oh, we're with the workers, okay? So that's the House version. And then on the Senate side, we'll have the Republicans block it through a filibuster, but we'll have some prominent Republicans who are pretending to go populist actually vote in favor of the workers.
Exactly.
So that those handful of Republicans can get all the credit for being populist, for fighting for the workers, while the Democrats take the blame. But either way, the donors that gave them the money to both the Republicans and the Democrats are incredibly happy. They get a little pat on the head. Hey, nice job, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries, Joe Biden, okay? And hey, look, who's the populist here is Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz. Well, you look at that. I mean, you literally couldn't bungle it any worse than this.
Josh Hawley voted against providing paid sick leave to federal employees. He was a no vote on that piece of legislation. He is not an economic populist.
Let me just tell you a little bit more about Josh Hawley, our fucking patron senator here at the Vanguard, the fucking odious prick. He also supports right to work in the state of Missouri, okay? If this guy wants to come out and tell you he's a fucking pro-union populist, get the fuck away from me. If that guy had his druthers, we would have right to work as a national policy, okay? This is one of those things that you guys will remind you that Gavin and I are actually Midwest fuckers over here, okay? The right to work battle is so on in Kansas City, and particularly it was a few years back in 2018 when it had to be defeated again. Okay, so people actually give a shit about this issue because we're in an area where it's like one of the last parts of the country where you can act like there are still some union jobs. Okay, and I just had to holler about a few things that I just didn't think that they did a decent enough job bringing this up. Maybe they will later, and I forgot. One, if it's going to cost you $2 billion a day to have a strike, that means those workers are making you a fuck ton of money, Every bit of profit that you're making, that's this irrationally large sum of money, in my mind, that is stolen, okay? It's no different than walking into Walmart and walking out with a big screen TV. You're stealing their profit. Guess what? These robber barons in the railroad industry, they're stealing the fucking money you make for them, and they're making you come to work sick as a dog, and they're putting a gun to your head, and they're saying, do you want to provide for your family at all, or do you want to be destitute? So that then guys like TYT can make videos about how you're a criminal and a lunatic, and even they're not on your side anymore because now you're fucking destitute. How do you like them apples? That's what's fucking happening. That's the other side to this argument that you're not going to get from TYT here. It's like, oh yeah, do the wildcat strike. Well, guess what? You lose your fucking job, you end up on the street, now you're a criminal to these people as well. So you got no fucking options here. And on top of all of that, they don't even mention yet that we're fucking deep in this video, and they haven't even mentioned that guess who else didn't vote to fucking guarantee them that paid sick leave? Raphael Warnock had better things to do than even show up. Didn't even show up. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm dealing with my runoff. Yeah, you run off as what? A fucking U.S. senator where you have a fucking job to do, where you were sent to represent the working class? That shit is maddening to me. You can't get on a fucking plane, fly to DC, cash your fucking vote, which is your goddamn duty because you're too goddamn greedy and trying to get reelected again. You want fucking another 6 years, guy? Okay, well, guess what? Big strike. Big L.
Yeah, that's such a great point. Thanks for bringing that up as well. Also, thank you so much, Alex, once again for the $9.99. Really appreciate that. Hawley is one of my least favorite politicians. He revives dead Rick Santorum socially conservative ideas with fake populism. Now, that's a guy I haven't thought of in a fat minute. Rick Santorum. Wow. I remember the Brokeback Mountain Jacket episode. Do you remember that, Zach?
Holy
Real
shit.
throwback.
What a throwback. That also, it reminds me of like the first fucking era. I was talking to my homie Peyton about this. The like first era of Kyle Kalinske was like big, like he was making Rick Santorum, or the first era I remember. Yeah,
you're totally on point, Alex. Really appreciate that. He's also one of my least favorite politicians. He's a truly odious and disgusting senator. So thank you so much, Alex. Really appreciate that. Thank you also, Brian, for the $1.99. Really appreciate you, Brian. The squad has been co-opted by party leadership. Yes, they have. We've spent much of our channel's history documenting that exact phenomena as it's happened in real time. And now it's to the point where it's so undeniable that even, TYT, the biggest cheerleaders out there of the squad, has essentially all but come to terms with that reality.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's funny. Even regular people that I just talked to that are like progressives, like I know they were like Bernie Sanders people when that was like a thing to be. Now they're all like, oh, it's whatever. The squad, like fucking okay, whatever. Like that fucking nothing's happening about that. And it's just like, wow, they've really fucking stamped out any of that momentum that they might have had, for sure, Brian. And I also agree with you, Brian. I saw your super chat. Nationalize the railroads. That's gonna become the new banner for the fucking Vanguard, 100%.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying earlier, Brian. And again, I like riding the trains, but there's no denying that the product Amtrak is fucking delivering should not warrant unionization. Like, the trains smell, they're uncomfortable, they're expensive as fuck for no reason. Go to literally any other developed country and you'll be riding the rails all around from one city to the next within a matter of couple hours, and for like $15 or like $30 or something like that. That was one of the most mind-blowing things to me when I visited other countries, is like how much superior their rails are. And for the fact that we're outsourcing this essential service, this transportation service, and obviously vastly important, not just for, customers and people that want to travel around the country, but also for the way it connects industries. For us to be outsourcing it to these private corporations, Amtrak is of course just one example, but there's others, for them to be failing this bad and delivering such a garbage product, it really just warrants nationalization. It's insane that hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as Kelly pointed out, nationalization got such a bad rap during the 50s and 60s because they were such that fucking McCarthyite fucking anti-communist scare. The Red Scare, it wiped out any kind of nationalization. And this is one of those things that really frustrates me, because smart people fucking that I talk to, they'll fall in this trap, right? Because it's soon enough, I'm a bartender, right? I talk shit with all the regulars that come in. Soon enough, we're going to fucking reveal to each other that I'm like basically a communist, right? I'm like, no, I believe in nationalization. Like, I don't know. And I don't care. I'm not like going to like lecture these guys. I work at a bar in Missouri. Almost all of them are like, well, I lean pretty conservative, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, man, I fucking lean away the other way. Let's talk about that, but like, if you bring up nationalization, they'll be like, you want to live in the USSR?
What?
I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. You fucking don't boil me down to this. I'll be like, oh, okay, you want to have fucking chattel slavery? Let's fucking take each other's horrible arguments. Like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. People do get weird about national when they bring it up. They act like you're saying some crazy idea. But I think specifically in this instance, it just makes all the sense in the world. Like, I can understand why people would defend markets in other instances, not necessarily ones that I would defend it in. But the rails is such an obvious one to nationalize. I think that would improve everyone's experiences, workers, customers, etc. So thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate that. And you're 100% correct. Also, thank you so much, Alex, once again for the $9.99. Really appreciate the super chats today, comrade. As much as I criticize TYT, AOC's new friend, Pod Save America, are way more cringe. Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. As I said, despite the glaring hypocrisy of Cenk also being a union buster himself, their coverage on this matter is pretty on point.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I see the pod save guys, I do want to like fucking hurt myself because I'm just like, oh, Jesus Christ. These were the guys that were in the room trying to make Obama seem like a good guy while he was like fucking starting 5 wars and bailing out the banks and kicking 1 million Americans out of their homes. Yeah, it's basically like the real life West Wing. Every time you tune into Pod Save America, it's like, what are they doing now? It's like, that's what they're doing. They're telling you that fucking Obama-fication of America was great, that we need to stay the neoliberal order, and that you need to shut the fuck up about anything else. It's a bummer for sure. But anyway, shout out to you, Alex. Really appreciate the generous donation.
Yep. And as we're about to see, as this clip escalates in intensity and rhetoric towards the squad members, which we're about to see, as I said, you'll understand why AOC is not going on progressive shows. Because at this point, even TYT, who historically has been eager to defend and apologize for the squad's inaction on other issues and make up excuses to defend them. Oh, they're not sellouts. They're not frauds, whatever. That's even come to an end now, seemingly at TYT completely, as you guys are about to see. So buckle up. This is about to get good. Thank you so much, Alex.
He does not care about ensuring that workers get paid sick leave. And by the way, I mean, if there were a prevalence of economic populists in the Republican Party, we would have no difficulty passing, mandatory family leave, something that we still don't have in this country. We do have in a huge portion of the country forced pregnancy and forced birth, with absolutely no social safety net to catch women and families as they struggle financially and are forced to bring a child into the world. But all of this, you're right, Cenk, the strategy by the, Republicans in the Senate who voted in favor of providing the paid time off, genius.
Yeah, of course, they know it's not gonna pass. And by the way, guys, just so you know, the Republicans talk to their colleagues. They know for a fact it's not going to pass.
Exactly.
It's not like they all go to the vote with like, golly gee, I don't know what's going to happen, right? So, and they have a certain amount of Republicans that say that, raise their hand and go, I would like to pretend to be a populist. And they go, oh, okay, sure, you can pretend because we're going to win this vote, right? And then by the way, the Democrats do the same thing. They tell Hakeem Jeffries, yeah, you guys can all pretend to be populist. And on the Senate, we're all pretending, other than Manchin, to be in favor of the American worker. We all know we're going to lose. So don't worry about it. And mainstream media, there are dogs, right? So they will unquestioningly report the Democrats, oh man, they tried so hard. But golly gee, for the billionth time in a row, there was nothing they could do.
I mean, we should, eventually, maybe you guys do it tomorrow. There should be a comparative analysis on independent media headlines on this vote versus how the corporate media headlines are written. Because from what I've already seen today, it's avert a strike, avert a strike, avert a strike, right? It's a good thing, it's positive. The legislation will prevent the strike from happening, avert the strike. It's not about how unbelievably cruel it is to force workers to essentially to show up to work sick, right?
0 paid sick days?
0 paid sick days. I mean,
It's
it is
absurd.
And we're talking about a monopolized industry that intentionally cut its workforce to the tune of 20% since 2018. Why do you think they did that? They did that to maximize their profits, spend as little as possible on labor, maximize profits so they can do the corporate stock buybacks, so they can do the dividends for their shareholders. That's all that matters to them. That's how the system works. And if anyone believes that members of Congress, especially Republican senators who are buying individual stocks themselves, who certainly do not want to see their stock portfolios suffer from a strike, but also they don't want their stock portfolios to suffer from corporations not maximizing their profits, right? So they always enable the corporate greed over and over and over again. This is how it's done. Most people can't see through this garbage. I gotta be honest, I'm real sick. This has happened multiple times at this point. I'm real sick of AOC in particular. Like one day on Twitter, she'll say, "I'm looking out for labor. It's unreasonable. We can't vote to prevent them from striking. They deserve the sick days off." Next day, she agrees to vote yes on the legislation that basically intervenes preventing them from striking. But then the next
Because
day,
they had a compromise.
Exactly. There's always an excuse. It's always like high-minded, three-dimensional chess, except you got played. Do you not see that?
So wait, but look, this is just factual. So
Jesus.
And so, look, she is an ostensible ally of ours. We're just being honest with you guys. If you really thought it was a compromise and the workers had a chance of winning, well, then you got played. That's a fact, right? Because they did not win. For the billionth time in a row, Democratic leadership lied to you. The only other option is you knew that it was a fake compromise and you voted for it anyway because you didn't want trouble in Washington. Trouble's a real pain in the ass, right? Oh, then everybody yells at you and everybody calls you the bad guy and they get their goons in corporate media to harangue you. Don't get me wrong, this is down, like, I get it. There's real pain associated with having courage in Washington.
Courage in life.
Right, and so, but every progressive huffs and puffs, et cetera, in Washington, and then goes along with the latest compromise with Democratic leadership, which always leads, 100% of the time, leads to the same result, which is, oh, golly gee, we lost. So no one could have guessed that the trust Biden strategy wouldn't work.
How many times does it need to happen? How many times? How many times do they need to hear that? Oh no, but we need to separate the bills. We need
and we're gonna pass your part later.
Yeah, no.
Right away.
How many times? How many times does it need to happen? I mean, it's laughable. Okay, so let's move on to what could happen next, because it's
really quickly. Gavin, are you good to go?
Yeah, sorry about that. Having some internet issues, so I just re-entered the stream. Hopefully it's a little bit better on my end now. But either way, yeah, that was the part of the clip that I think really caught some traction, and people were, pretty shocked to see that kind of rhetoric from TYT of all people. Once again, historic defenders and apologists of the squads in action, and people that have in the past refused to accept the fact that they've long sold us out, long ago sold out the movement that elected them. And here, they've seemingly come to terms with that, at least in this instance, saying this is fucking unacceptable and incredibly frustrating. And their rhetoric on Twitter is not matching up with the way they actually present in Congress, with the way they actually resist this anti-labor administration.
Yeah, 100%. It's absolutely incredible to watch even people that we constantly dog on for being the most ardent defenders of the squad coming out and ripping their ass like this, because it's so plain as day obvious that this was a horrible idea, that there was no strategy behind this, that they were on the wrong side of history. I do not know how you defend this. This is unacceptable. It is that any kind of defense that anybody can send to me about laissez-faire economics or capitalism, or, oh, actually the market will decide properly, right? We never let the market decide properly if it's going to fuck the rich assholes. We just say, oh God, sorry guys, you can't have that, and I know it's a tired fucking quote, but it is, because it is a great quote. It is a truth. Martin Luther King: socialism for the rich, rugged individualism for the poor. That is exactly what describes our economic system. Oh, if you're a working class person and you eat the shaft, guess what? You deserved it. Sorry, that's just how the game is played. Rise and fall market. Should have predicted that. Happens to the fucking Lehman Brothers. All right, it happens to bailout. It happens to the railroad industry because they're going to have to deal with $2 billion a day in losses because of a strike. Sorry. Sorry, it's illegal to strike now. It's illegal to strike now. We got capitalism for Christmas, okay? Get your shit together, you fucking pawns. That's what we do. That's how we treat the working class in this country. Imagine that. I want every single motherfucker listening that considers themselves the working class. I do. You just got spit in your face with them because you think they'll do that to the essential railroad workers? My job as a bartender is not that fucking essential, okay? My job as a loudmouth on the internet, not that fucking essential. You think they'll blink twice before they take our rights away? I don't fucking think so, guy.
On point, 100%. 100%. So yeah, pretty fiery rant from TYT there, Anna Kasparian in particular, really just at her boiling point. Like, I can't defend these people anymore. We've seen this from Anna a couple times in the past where her defenses of the squad have become more and more mealy-mouthed and have become kind of, half-hearted, like, well, I kind of see what they're doing, but this is unfortunate. This is disappointing, yada, yada, yada. Here, they drop the pretense, knives out. This is bullshit. We have to call this out. To do otherwise would be journalistic malpractice, essentially, and just a complete betrayal of their progressive values, which, again, is very hypocritical given the fact that Cenk Uygur tried to bust the TYT union himself. But I still think it's a pretty good kind of barometer of where the progressive movement is at as it relates to their feelings about the squad and their performances in Congress and their refusal and failure to do what they were elected to do in the first place, which is to resist the neoliberal order of the Democratic Party leadership, not play into it every single fucking time. They have nothing to show for their time in Congress. They have no accomplishments to brag about. And time again, they fucking capitulate like cowardly children. It's so predictable. And again, we've got to the point now where even defenders and apologists of these Congress members are at their wits' end and no longer have it in them to continue those defenses. So I think that's very telling. And we got a couple super chats. Do you want to get into those, Zach, or did you want to comment any more on that video?
Oh, no, we can go into them. I was wondering, okay, I was wondering if you still had the ones from when you left and came back in. This is what pisses me. Oh, shout out to you, the Sinister Mister, for the $5 donation. Really appreciate that. This is what pisses me off about Anna. Times like this, she is absolutely blazing, 100%. It makes the rest of the time where she misses the mark way worse. Yeah, it does. It is a bummer to watch somebody who can be so on the fucking money on one issue and then just like really bring the house down. I'm going to call it the Fetterman effect for now. They can bring the house down for when you're talking about why we why I really wonder what Fetterman would have done on this vote. This would have been such a fucking telling vote about Fetterman. We didn't get to see it, but this would have been a fucking big one. But they can burn down the house when it comes to minimum wage and fucking union rights rhetorically and all kinds of stuff, and then they'll turn around and then they'll be like, Pennsylvania needs fracking. And I'll be like, are you a fucking idiot? I want to fucking kick you in the teeth for saying that. What the hell is the matter with you? You're going to burn down the entire globe because you want, like, you're just like too afraid to make the fucking clean energy pitch to the fucking population. This is what happens when it's like Anna. It's like, yeah, you want to support the working class until they've fucking been so pushed that they're destitute. And then you want to villainize them. You want to criminalize them. I am very suspect of this entire, forced fucking mental health treatment for these people because the fucking dirty fucking pigs are going to misuse that shit and just put people they don't like that are desperately need a treatment and traumatize them more. Anyway, don't have any love for that. But that's what happens when on the other side of Anna's token. That's why it's so fucking maddening, where it's like, yeah, you can be so right here, but do you understand that what happens if these people put their chips in the middle and then they lose and then they can't pay their bills and then over time, if they can't find another job because they've been blacklisted by the only industry that they've ever worked in, that they're going to become fucking homeless, and then you're going to just villainize them because you see them out on the street and you're afraid of them now. Like, I mean, that is the double-edged sword here.
Yeah, speaking of that, new policy by Eric Adams to involuntarily institutionalize the homeless. Check out Anna's breakdown of that on TYT. That was very interesting to watch her kind of thread that. She's like, well, I kind of agree with his underlying logic here, but I don't think that in effect it's going to work out like we. It's like, okay. But yeah, that was definitely also pretty amusing. But
I might dig that up for Monday's show.
You should find it. It would be a good time to react to. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much, the Sinister Mister. Really do appreciate the $5. And yeah, it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating because on some issues, and this is how I feel about TYT as as a whole, and quite frankly some other commentators that we cover as well. It's like sometimes they're on fire, and I remember why I originally once was a huge fan of TYT, right back in 2016. When you see a take like this and you're like, oh yeah, it's like transported right back to that era, before they started making such terrible arguments and regurgitating such lazy talking points, specifically on the issue of crime. But I think also up until now, their coverage of the congressional progressives has been very mealy-mouthed, and they've really hesitated to call a spade and call these people sellouts and confront them over the fact that they failed to do their most basic task of resisting the leadership of their own party, which again was the whole fucking point of sending them there. So anyway, thank you so much, Sinister Mister. Really do appreciate that. And thank you also, Brian. On a related note, AOC is only an ally to her own career. Yep, she is terrified of controversy. That's the thing about AOC, and that's how you know she's not a real leader, right? She's terrified of controversy. And that's the one thing that kind of separates Ilhan Omar into an even greater degree, Rashida Tlaib, I think, who again have largely failed to adequately resist Democratic leadership, but at least occasionally Rashida and sometimes also Ilhan will lean into these more controversial issues. They're not terrified of the media. They're not shit scared of the liberal establishment. They're willing to sometimes take on a fight and stake a controversial or unpopular opinion. AOC flees from controversy like a fucking deer running out of the forest fire. Like, it's crazy how averse she is to just the smallest amount of pushback from the liberal media.
Yep, absolutely. Shout out to you, Brian. And yeah, AOC is a fucking ladder climber, and I think she's proven that at every single opportunity. So shout out to you. Really appreciate that donation. And yeah, Alex, TYT is 100% corporate media. Oh,
absolutely. Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you so much, Brian. Really do appreciate that. We good? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just responding to the next super chat. I didn't know if you.
Sorry, I got a little bit of lag on the internet. Sorry
no, you're
about
good. No, you're totally fine. But yeah, I was just gonna reaffirm. Yep, they are still built off of the fucking structures of the corporate media system. They have not, changed that formula. They accepted the Katzenberg money and all of that, which is well documented. So shout out to you, Al.
Yeah, and that's another thing we've talked a lot about on this show is the fact that I used to be a big fan of TYT back in the day. And then basically as soon as they took that money, not only did some of their talking points or the quality of a lot of their talking points go down, but also just the general vibe of the show, the personality of it seemed to dissipate. So that's been one of the consistent themes of our show too, is breaking down the descent of TYT and the decline of its quality and vibe, because it used to be a really special show in my opinion. Not so much these days, although you still see glimpses of that former greatness like we just did. Either way, thank you so much, Alex. Really do appreciate that super chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to you, Andrew. Don't get too excited. I bet $20 million Anna goes back to defending them by Monday. There's no money in standing up to the powerful. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we'll hear some sympathetic arguments from Anna about the squad in the future, though I do think that we have reached a noticeable pivot in a line in the sand where, there's just been so many fucking dirty L's that the squad has participated in, that what the fuck do you hope to even extract from them at this point? They have just devastated their brand with the people that, were initially invested in their success.
Absolutely. Although I did see they got a couple clips recently that have been doing numbers. I don't know if you saw that, but they had a clip about Kanye that almost is at like 800,000 views. I was like, damn, bro, I haven't seen that kind of numbers on TYT in a while. So maybe they're building back better. Maybe that's why they're reaching out to the right wing now, doing the fucking right wing pivot to get more views. That is the business model on YouTube. But either way, thank you so much, Andrew.
Dark Anna rising.
Exactly. But yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. Really appreciate that. Thank you also, Mad Ocelot God, for the $5. Always appreciate you, Mad Ocelot God. Another embarrassing L from the squad. I volunteered for Justice Democrats in 2017. Even then, I got a distinct teacher's pet vibe from many of the people there. That's the least surprising thing I've ever heard. That's pretty funny though. And yeah, there was a point where Justice Democrats really seemed like it had potential. This was back before Cenk Uygur was kind of ousted from the organization over some of his old blog posts and some offensive jokes. And then, of course, Kyle Kulinski, another co-founder of Justice Democrats, stepped down in solidarity with Cenk. But and I feel like there was a big shift of the culture and strategy over there after that. And the more aggressive approach kind of went out the window. I'm not saying that if Cenk and Kyle had stuck around, then we'd be living in a world where the squad members were adequately resisting the leadership like we want them to. But it is true that Justice Democrats at one point did seem like a much more aggressively poised institution or organization that really was trying to fight back. And now it just seems like, let's elect slightly less shitty Democrats. And that's their whole modus operandi.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds, I mean, it's what we've been calling here on the Vanguard, the like Obamification of the like squad. Essentially, they're just moving back towards the center of where the corporate dollars keep flowing, and then rhetorically they just stay with the people. It's a bait and switch, like, you know, we've seen time and time again. But thank you so much, Matt Ocelot. Always good to see you in the chat.
Yeah, really appreciate that as always, man. And also just want to skip forward a little bit to say thank you so much, Boeing. Really appreciate the $20 as always. Really generous super chat. Thank you so much, Boeing. Great show and commentary as always. Have a great weekend, everyone. Yeah, really appreciate it. Glad you're enjoying the show. Glad you're digging the commentary, Boeing. And I was just on a Boeing 737 a couple of days ago, flying from Kansas City into New Orleans. So I was thinking about you, Boeing. But I was like, this is a slightly smaller plane than the one you pilot. So either way, really appreciate the super chat as always.
Yeah, the 757s, I remember I Googled pictures of them one. Those are fucking giant ass planes. So shout out to you, Boeing. And thank you so much for the kind words and the generous super chat. Really appreciate that.
Yeah, we always appreciate seeing you in the chat, Boeing. Thanks so much. Glad you're enjoying the show. And back to some super chats from earlier. Thank you so much, Alex, once again for the, I guess we already answered this one, correct? Yeah. Thank you so much once again, though, Alex. Really appreciate it. And thank you. What was that?
Oh, I was just going to shout out that was the next. Oh, Gavin might be losing internet connection for a second, but how did the whole wheel push? Oh, okay, but how did the whole wheel push Biden left work out? Worked out pretty goddamn poorly, guys. Unfortunately, he has done the old jerk to the right, and a lot of people aren't too surprised by that.
Yeah, absolutely pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. And yeah, pushing Biden left isn't actually working. Unfortunately, the people that are in Congress whose job it is to fucking push them left are doing their fucking job. Like, you know, even if you put the voting aside, how the squad voted on this, they should at least be acting as a left flank and making a fucking ruckus about this. And like, this is the time to do what you were elected to do, which is to call out these fucking neoliberals, these corporatists who are betraying the union population in this country, the labor population, one of the supposed backbones, cornerstones of the Democratic Party electorate. So total insanity. And again, it's really frustrating now more than ever that the people who were elected to be the left flank are sucking at being the left flank this hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you, keeper of the track-in. Yeah, Biden is no friend of working people. Absolutely not. No arguments there, Brian. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Yeah, and of course, this is something we all knew. I don't think anyone in this audience was under any illusions about that. But yeah, it's definitely been laid bare now more so than ever. Just what a traitor this man is. Oh, Scranton Joe, fucking friendly Mr. Labor president. I'm a working class guy. Yeah, fuck you. Fuck you. But thank you so much, Brian. Really do appreciate the 199 as always. Speaking of defenders, anything from Majority Report? Haven't actually checked out the coverage over at the Majority Report. I have a hard time believing that they'd be defending the squad in this instance, but I can't say for sure, given the fact that, like I said, I haven't actually checked out what they've been talking about. If they've commented on this yet, I imagine they have. Have you heard anything from the Majority Report crew, Zach?
I saw Emma Vigeland was actually tweeting some base shit about this. So shout out to Emma Vigeland for being on the right side of this issue, but I haven't seen any of their actual on-air commentary yet.
Yeah, we can try to find that tweet from Emma because I would be interested to hear what she had to say about it. But either way, thank you so much, Hysteric Raider. Really do appreciate that. And but again, I have a hard time believing that even the majority report would be handling this issue with kids' gloves. It seems like pretty much the entire progressive movement, the kind of like Bernie Sanders Democrats, are completely fed up with the squad's inaction, with the way they voted here, and with the Biden administration as a whole and the entire Democratic Party. So I have a hard time believing they're defending anyone, but who knows? You know, we'll check in on that. Thank you so much, Hysteric Raider. Really appreciate that. Thank you also, George, for the 279. Have a good weekend, guys. You too, George. Thank you so much. I'm having a great little vacation down here in New Orleans. So I'm definitely enjoying my weekend. I hope you are too, Zach.
Yep, absolutely. Got to go feed the people some drinks here in a little bit, which I always enjoy. Unfortunately, the United States got booted from the World Cup this morning, but I did not enjoy that. Yeah, we lost to the Netherlands, got pretty much slaughtered 3-1. But hey, the Netherlands are fucking good at soccer. Shocker. The Dutch, they know what they're fucking doing. So
we got further than I thought, though.
Oh yeah, definitely. So shout out to you, George. Hope you have a good weekend as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, George. And thank you once again, Brian. Really appreciate the 1-9. Warnock didn't give us those $2,000 checks. Yeah, that was the first sign that Warnock was not as based as some of those clips being circulated by the GOP made him out to be. You know, those clips going around of him like railing against imperialism and defending socialism. And I was like, maybe this guy's actually kind of based, right? Apparently not. You know, kind of just your average Democrat. You know, on some issues, he's been better than your average Democrat, but then on a lot of others, he's been totally disappointing. And the fact that he sailed into office on this promise of $2,000 checks only to turn around and, you know, for one, it took forever. It took way too long to get those checks out. But then when they finally did go out, it was a measly $1,400. So that was also super disappointing, as you said, Brian. And a real red flag. You know, if I sailed into office on such a promise, the least you could do is fucking fight for it, man. The least you could do is make a stink and be like, hey, these people just came out and fucking voted for me based on this. Let's at least try.
100%. It was absolute horseshit, and that was the other big first strike for Biden as well. Because I mean, look, Warnock ran on it, but he ran on it because Joe Biden was promising it, and I mean that's a kind of a top level down mistake, and it just shows the rot of the the Democratic Party. Almost fucking Freudian slipped there. Fucking but yeah, just the hollowness and the fact that they're not actually interested in delivering anything for the American people. They're just interested in offering just the bare fucking minimum to get into office, and usually that's just a whim and a prayer. So yeah, fuck them, and shout out to you, Brian. How is AOC not kicked out of DSA by now? I imagine I don't know if there are fucking instrumentation for her to be kicked out of DSA. I don't know how that works. I'm not like an active member of the DSA at this point, but I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much being kicked out, but they could at least, you know, put out a strongly worded statement being like, this is not how our Congress people should be voting or acting in this instance. And this is, you know, something unfortunately that we've seen from DSA from the beginning is their total refusal to criticize or in any way hold their elected officials accountable. And AOC is a DSA member. She's endorsed by the DSA, and they basically never do anything to criticize her strategy or the larger strategy of the other DSA endorsed congressional progressives like Jamal Bowman or Cory Bush. So yeah, it's really a shame that the DSA doesn't take a more aggressive approach there and, you know, kind of put their foot down and be like, hey, like if you're going to be part of our organization and benefit from our endorsement, the least you could do is actually fight for the values that we espouse and stand for. And again, that's not something we've seen a lot of from the folks over at the DSA who do a good job at a local level. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to, you know, take a shit all over the DSA. I think they do a lot of really good work at, again, the local level, a lot of really hardworking activists and people that are really have their heart in the right place, that are doing really, really strong work. So, and organizing. But yeah, that's been just utterly disappointing in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate that super chat, Pedro the Line. And Dark Anna Rising, don't disrespect Batman. Sorry, Andrew. I know you're a resident comic book guy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. Really do appreciate that. That's pretty funny. So thank you so much, man. Also, thank you, Hysteric Raider, once again for the $2. Like the squad, Justice Democrats is full of clout chasers. Yeah, well, I mean, the squad members are Justice Democrats, so absolutely. You know, it sucks, right? It's unfortunate to see what's happened to that whole project.
Unfortunately, I think that's just happened to all of the fucking progressive Congress. Just like everybody that could have, like, Bernie Sanders. I mean, seriously, like, I mean, Bernie did his best, I guess, to get that fucking, 7-day paid sick leave. But, I mean, I don't know. It's just everybody's been a massive disappointment recently. That no doubt about it. Shout out to you, Hysteric Raider.
Yeah, thank you so much, Hysteric Raider. Really do appreciate that. And thank you so much, S. Charles, for the $9.99. Really do appreciate that as well. Do you have any thoughts on Oregon's Measure 114 guns restriction? I'm all for change when it comes to gun reform, but I feel like this measure is so overreaching, it just damages the cause. Well, I can't say I'm an expert on this one. S. Charles, unfortunately, I'm not super acquainted with this specific piece of legislation. However, I did just Google it. And apparently, some Oregon gun shops selling weapons to customers who might fail a background check. So I think it has something to do with the tightening of gun regulations and restrictions as it relates to background checks. Are you at all familiar with this one, Zach?
Yeah, so what this one does is it ends a loophole that allows firearm dealers to sell guns without a background check if it's not completed within 3 business days. So it basically requires everyone now to pass a background check, and it also requires them to pass a firearm safety training. I think the more controversial element of the law is that it bans the sale of bullet magazines that hold over 10 rounds. But I got to be honest with you, Charles, S. Charles. I don't have a problem with that. I don't see a reason that's going to be overreaching to me. But I do know there are a lot of gun purists in this country that would think what I'm saying is heretics and a violation of our constitutional rights. So yeah, that would just be my 2 cents.
I would agree with that. I'll have to do more research to have a fully formed opinion. So thanks for alerting us to that. We really appreciate the $9.99. And let us know what you think in the chat. You probably have a stronger opinion than I do as someone who's not living in Oregon and has not done a lot of research on the amendment or the measure myself. So let us know what you think in the chat. But thank you so much for the $10. Really do appreciate it. And thank you, Bookworm Skates. Always love seeing you in the chat, Bookworm Skates. Thank you so much for the $4.99. Majority Report was just on a new 6-host podcast called The Leftist Mafia. It's pretty based similar to a Vanguard stream. Yeah, I actually was tuning into a little bit of the first episode of The Leftist Mafia, new panel show with our good friend Olayemi and Mike Figueredo, David Dole, the Surfs, and a couple other folks as well. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, thanks for letting us know about that, Bookworm Skates. I was, like I said, just tuning in the other day.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to all those folks, good guys over there, or good people rather. It's but shout out to them. Yeah, we'll probably react to it at some point, maybe down the line. But yeah, just good content for everybody to know about. So yeah, shout out to you, Bookworm Skates, and shout out to you, Jonathan Boyle. We can thank the brilliant strategy of the bloat no matter who libs for this fiasco. Yeah, or the same strategy that was employed by the progressive caucus. I mean, all kinds of shit. It's the same bait and switch always. It's like, oh, we'll separate the bill and then we'll get everybody to vote for the good one after we voted for the bad one. It's like, no, the people are going to vote for the bad one, and the good bill be damned. So yeah, shout out to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jonathan. And yeah, it's pretty unfortunate. Not that if the Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, anything different would happen. But yeah, it's definitely totally disappointing. Especially given the climate right now as it relates to the labor movement and how much success we've seen in various aspects of the labor movement, Amazon, Starbucks, etc. Now is the time for these progressives to really take a stand and put their fucking foot down. And it's just such a shame to see them fumble the ball in such an epic fashion. I think this next one's for you, Zach. Thank you so much, Brittany.
Absolutely. This is a reference to when we lost to Cincinnati last year again. Everybody loves to rub it in our face. How many Super Bowls have you won in recent memory over there in Cincinnati, Brittany? Just curious. Just curious how many MVPs your quarterbacks won. Just curious how many playoff appearances your coach has. How many regular season victories your coach over there has. Yeah, I'm sitting pretty over here in Kansas City. But Zach, you're on fire, and I'm gonna let you finish. Ooh, a dicey Kanye reference right there. But Cincinnati is gonna spank the Chiefs again tomorrow. Condolences, have one on me. I might have to send you that $5 back because it's gonna be nothing but W over here. But yeah, shout out to you. Appreciate the super chat.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brittany. We really appreciate that super chat. And thank you so much, Brian. Once again, really appreciate your super chats today, man. The squad has done more for Ukraine than U.S. workers. That is the unfortunate reality of the situation, Brian. That is the unfortunate reality of the situation. And once again, that's another instance where the squad has just had such little backbone, failed to even really articulate their position on the matter, one way or the other. If you guys remember that debacle as it related to the Congressional Progressive Caucus, the letter they put out, and then subsequently retracted. Ryan Grimm interviewed AOC about that, and she was like, well, just gave a word salad, mealy-mouthed answer, as always, saying, well, I, support the letter, but I also support it being retracted. It's like, just fucking take a position for once. Like, just have some sort of a backbone, have some sort of a stance. It drives me crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you, Brian. Really appreciate how active you've been in the chat today. It's always good to see some familiar faces with good insight, as well as Matt Osalagod, another familiar face. One day we will recognize this representative democracy for the crude farce that it is, electing a rep equal a handshake deal, fundamentally naive logic. Absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing more clear. I think it was actually a Good Politic guy that tweeted this the other day, where he was like, how the fuck are you going to tell me that a majority of the people support this? A majority of the railroad workers voted for it. A majority of senators voted for it. And yet it needed 60 fucking votes to pass to become law. But then the president can just fucking like, what? No. Get the fuck out of here. This is not democracy. This is a fucking watered down bullshit. And we should call it what it is. So shout out to you, Matt Osalagod.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much for the super chat. You're 100% on point. And it's crazy that this is even that the fucking Congress and the government is convening to impose this contract on private railroad corporations in the first place, trying to prevent the strike from happening. Again, when these industries aren't even unionized in the first place, what fucking business does the government have shoving this contract down their throats, imposing this shit deal on these workers? It's insanity. And you're absolutely right about the fucking crude farce that is our so-called representative democracy. Could not have put it better myself, Matt Osalagod. So as always, we really appreciate your comments.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out to you. And what I do believe is our last super chat of the day. Shout out to you, Bob blah blah. It is a shame. Speaking of the NFL, you have the perfect name to do something related to the NFL. Bob blah blah. That sounds like an NFL name. You got to be like a referee or a coach or something. The blah blah team, the blah blah offense. I'm telling you, man. Appreciate that 350. We will spend it wisely.
Yeah, I might have to go grab myself a cup of coffee after this stream. I'll make sure to spend that wisely. Thank you so much, Bob. Really do appreciate it. And yeah, unless anyone wants to fire off a final super chat, I do think that concludes today's live stream. I'm really happy we jumped on. Hey, Gabe Newell coming in clutch. Thank you so much for the $4.99. Hey guys, just tuning in. So forgive me if you did cover this already, but have you guys followed the drama with Tim Pool's sister exposing his grift? We have not covered it yet, but I have been following this. I saw some pretty spicy tweets from Tim Pool's sister saying like, what the fuck are you doing, bro? Demonizing the LGBT community. Like, we grew up going to, in a part of Chicago, I believe, that was very LGBT friendly and had a large LGBT population. And, these were some of the best people we knew as kids. Like, I know that this is bullshit rhetoric, and you're literally just grifting and demonizing this community of people, getting up a moral panic for money and clicks. It's disgusting. So shout out to her. We might have to cover that more on the stream on a future episode. So thanks for the reminder, Gabe. But yes, I have been following that.
Yeah, we'll come back when Gavin gets back into town with a spicy fucking marathon stream, because there will be a lot of cleanup to do. I still have to live react to that Kanye West appearance on InfoWars with you guys. We have a lot of crazy shit to react to. We just couldn't miss this opportunity to dunk on the squad over this horseshit vote. My laptop is about to die, and the people of Kansas City are about to need their fucking beverages. So I'm about to get the fuck out of here. Gavin, enjoy the rest of your vacation. It was good catching up with you, and really appreciate everybody in the chat. Except for you, Brittany, go fuck yourself. You're gonna get screwed tomorrow. Okay, Gavin, I don't know if you know this, but you know that Cincinnati is the reason we didn't go to the Super Bowl. They beat us in the AFC Championship, and it was like honestly, it was one of those things where like it was overtime. It was a bad loss. The Chiefs played kind of like shit. Compared to how we normally would. It was a big game. We lost it. And then I think they went and lost to like fucking Tampa or some shit. Anyway, yeah.
Gotcha. That makes more sense. But either way, thank you for the super chat, Brittany. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in today. I'll see you around, Zach. Have a good one. And a huge shout out to the Patreon community, of course. Thought we had a great live stream today. Thanks so much, everyone, for the super chats and the comments in general. Thanks, everyone, for hitting that like button. And huge thank you to the patron community. Shout out to you, Das Fleisch. Always appreciate your super chats as well. Maybe electing the ghosted Scrooge might help. Yeah, Joe Biden needs to have a bit of a Christmas Carol sort of phantom visit him. The ghosts of labor leaders past can, creep up on him in the middle of the night and scare some sense into that fucking bastard. Absolutely. But yeah, thank you so much, Das Fleisch. Really, really do appreciate that. And yeah, like I said, thanks everyone for tuning in today. Appreciate you, Virtuoso. That's really kind of you. Thank you all so much for tuning in today. Really appreciated, hanging out with you guys, chatting about this really frustrating story as it relates to labor and this railroad strike, and our piece of shit president and ineffective left flank. So it's been good to commiserate with you guys. Really, really appreciate you all tuning in today, hitting that like button. And again, a huge, sincere shout out to the patron community. We wouldn't be able to do the show without you guys. The patrons do make our show 100% possible. So if you enjoy our content, if you agree with our perspective and think the work we do is even of minor importance, we really would appreciate if you guys hit up that link in the description. It's the best way to support the show and make sure that we remain sustainable as a completely independent, viewer-funded podcast. So we really do appreciate that. As I said, the link's in the description. As always, it's patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. It really is the best way to support the show. Even just like $5 a month goes so far. So thank you guys so much. We really appreciate the support. Thank you, patrons. We appreciate it. And thanks again, everyone, for tuning in today. Loved hanging out with you guys, and we will see you in the near future. Probably when I get back to KC, but potentially before that if some crazy shit goes down that we just have to talk about. But either way, really appreciate you all for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.